Thunder are on a 3-game losing streak, or in other words, they've been on the road. where they've lost 7 in a row overall. They're just 12-20 on the road, in fact. In particular, the D has deserted OKC away from home, but that's where they are tonight. Sekou Smith is with us tonight from Oklahoma. And Sekou, the Thunder are 3-3 since they brought in Taj Gibson and Doug McDermott to fortify their bench at the trade deadline, but that also breaks down to 3-0 at home and 0-3 on the road. So what do the Thunder know about the new acquisition's impact so far?
Well, I mean, honestly, Matt, they're still finding out. They're still trying to figure out exactly how these guys fit into the mix. You know, you got to remember, Enes Kanter is coming back. They got more than just the new additions. They got some older guys in terms of guys who have been around, who they're trying to integrate into the mix and get them all on the same page, playing well, playing off of Russell Westbrook, and playing well together. There's a big man rotation that has to be figured out where Taj Gibson is involved, with Steven Adams, and certainly with Enes Kanter. That's still a work in progress. A lot on Billy Donovan's plate right now.
Well, there's a little more as well, because Russell Westbrook picked up his 14th technical foul Sunday in Dallas when he looked really frustrated, by the way. As you know, that puts him 2 away from an automatic 1-game suspension. And considering his importance to this team, has Billy Donovan felt the need to have a conversation with his star point guard?
I don't think anybody has to tell Russ about, you know, the trajectory of his season and what's going on, and just to be aware of how important he is to this group and to this team and what they're trying to get done. The other part you got to factor in that is down the stretch of this season, Matt, they're going against teams that are fighting with them, you know, for either playoff positioning or a playoff spot. So Russ has to know how crucial he is to the success of this team. They can't afford to not have him out there. They really can't afford to not have him getting triple-doubles the way they've been going. And certainly down the quarter pole of the season, you got to have Russell Westbrook fully integrated and really locked into what you're doing if you're trying to get the highest possible playoff seed.
Sekou, when you look at you know, OKC and you talk about, you know, who they would match up well against in the West, what team do you think they would have the best shot at you know, beating in the first round if they were to match up with them? Not which would be the most interesting. Which team do you think they got a chance to beat?
Yeah, I don't think there's any question. The most interesting would obviously be a Golden State, Oklahoma City first-round matchup, which, you know, who knows how this plays out. Honestly, Isaiah, I think if you look at their parts and the pieces they have in the front court, they could really give Houston some fits in terms of just the number of big men you could throw out there to clog up the lane and maybe make things difficult for a Houston team that wants to play with all that space and get the ball out to their shooters on the perimeter. I think, you know, with the number of guys they have, and Taj Gibson included, that's their best shot, you know, in terms of maybe knocking somebody off in a first-round series.
You know, I'm wondering, Sekou, if you had any chance to speak to Billy Donovan or either McDermott or Taj Gibson, because in this scenario, when you get traded, you're playing a game every other night. There's no practice time. It's very difficult for a player at this point in the season to learn the system of what it is that team does in particular. And you and I talked about, Sekou, the tornado that is Russell Westbrook. I mean, that's a player that is so unique that you have to adjust to as well. There's a lot on the plate for Gibson and McDermott.
Yeah, Bones, I talked to Gibson about that specifically this morning. And, you know, it's tough because they're coming from a situation where you're playing with Dwayne Wade and Jimmy Butler, where you have multiple guys that are doing what Russ is doing by himself. So you got to really find your lane when you're playing with him. And, you know, Gibson is not in the starting lineup, you know, as of yet. And who knows how that shakes out. But, you know, it's different when you're playing off the bench for a team like this than it is when you come in and you're in the starting unit and you're playing directly with Russell Westbrook. So a lot of that's still to be worked out. I'll be curious to see how comfortable, you know, Doug McDermott gets coming off and being kind of a sniper for him and not worrying about the other parts of the game, but just coming off and being a shooter and somebody who takes some of the scoring pressure off Russ. Taj Gibson, his role is pretty defined. You know, they want him to be a tough guy. You know, some muscle guy that protects Russell Westbrook when he has to, but also lends some of that physicality around the rim on both ends of the floor. It just takes time. I think they need time to get comfortable in those roles, and it'll come. You don't have a ton of time left, obviously, in the regular season, but enough time for these guys to get comfortable.
And the new guys will play for the first time tonight in the same rotation with Victor Oladipo, who's back after missing 6 games with back spasms. He's going to start tonight. Are we expecting regular minutes out of Oladipo?
I don't know if regular is expected. I certainly think, you know, they want to test it and see what his limits are. But really, Matt, you know, this is, like I said, these are all must-win games. You're playing against teams that you're fighting it out with down there at the bottom of the Western Conference standings. If he can't give you what you need, if physically he can't do that, you got to be able to go to whatever the next guy is and push him into that role. So Billy Donovan, again, has a lot to do, a lot of moving parts on his plate right now to try and make sure they're not sacrificing crucial games for the sake of trying to get guys back into the mix. So it'll be interesting to see what they do with Oladipo tonight for sure.
A critical stretch coming up for the Thunder. Sekou Smith with us from Oklahoma City. Appreciate the time and the three-piece suit.